Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle housing market watch for November 25th, 2025. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. We're a couple days away from the holiday, and I'm excited to spend a few days with my family. Kids are out of school. We're going to get to see the extended family and enjoy some really good food and time together. So I'm hopeful that you have some fun plans for Thanksgiving as well. And during this holiday week, normally we don't see very much real estate activity. There are going to be a few new listings. There were some last week. There will be very few this week. And in fact, next week, when we do this update, there will be probably, if not this week, it'll be the Christmas week, the smallest amount of new listings for the year in any single week. And what's been happening over the past few weeks has really been happening for the past few months. It happens every year, and the inventory is constricting. And I'll share some pretty big news as we get towards the end of this video when it comes to the inventory. But let's talk about the market watch data here as we do at the beginning of these updates. And as a reminder, we're looking at King and Snohomish County single family data here, and we're looking at the past week. Today is November 25th. The amount of listings here over the past week, 315 new listings. The downward trend has continued. We were at 396 new listings last week, so continuing to see a decline in inventory, at least in new inventory. Lots of price reductions still. We've been talking about this for months and months. This is not a new thing. 341 price reductions this week, and we had 479 price reductions the previous week. We've continued to see that certain houses that have not sold yet, have been on the market, are seeing price reductions. Some of the new listings coming on are selling pretty quickly and are not seeing price reductions, but a big part of that is because they're pricing appropriately for the current market conditions. There's a lot swirling around. We have conversations around the Fed rate cuts. Are they going to continue? We've had conversations around some of the data, jobs data. How's inflation? Do we have that under control yet? I think there are just so many questions swirling, but in the midst of that, and even locally, jobs, right? How's the job market? We're seeing layoffs. Is this going to continue? Are we going to have a mass exodus of people? Are we going to have a ton of people unemployed? Lots of concerns, even in the midst of all this, right? We're just seeing a constriction in inventory like we always see every single fall. The listings continue to sell too. Pending sales over the last week, 631 pending sales. And on this data, it's important to note some of these are homes that were already maybe pending inspection and have gone closer to sold, as I like to call them. So pending inspections becoming pending sales, meaning they don't have that inspection contingency or a feasibility contingency anymore. And then we also have a lot of new pending sales, clearly keeping up with and even surpassing the amount of listings because of what I'm going to share in a little bit. Last week, we had 606 sold listings, 491 solds here this week. We'll have some more as we wrap up the month here today and tomorrow, and then also after the holiday weekend. We are nearing the end of the month, and as we're doing that, interest rates have still been hovering in the same realm, 6.32 on today's Mortgage News Daily survey. Last week, 6.36. Interest rates have remained in this place largely because of the Fed commentary at the last meeting that maybe we're not going to see rate cuts, and even some of the data that's been coming out. There's been more conversation. And again, this is really old. This is like months ago, right? There's a backlog of information that has not been processed because of the government shutdowns. And some of the conversations have been, hey, maybe we're going to see rates stay in this low to mid sixes. And that's very possible. And I think that's stunted a little bit of the enthusiasm for the market. But in fact, we've been seeing still some pretty good market activity. Rates, though, haven't been dropping like we were hoping. I think we may still see rates dropping early in 2026, but not in any kind of huge way. But I think we're still trying to figure out if we have a issue with jobs, right? If we have inflation under control or if inflation is continuing to rise. And if that's the case, we're not going to be continuing to see rate cuts. So I think continuing to watch inflation data, continuing to listen to the Fed commentary, but also just paying attention to the 10-year Treasury. That's the best indicator of where the mortgage rates are going to be. Okay. We're going to talk about King and Snohomish County specifically here now as we look at pending sales data. And this pending sales data is over the last week as well. So from the 18th till today, beginning of the 25th. Now, something I wanted to share, the big news, the inventory is dropping rapidly. This is something that I shared that we were going to continue to see inventory dropping, but it's dropping quickly. In King County, at the end of October, there were 3,868 single-family listings in King County. As of right now, there are 1,739. Less than half of the inventory that we had at the beginning of the month. So we've been having new listings coming on, but we've also had some canceled listings, right? Some listings that have come off the market. We've had buyers eating up the houses that are on the market, and the amount of inventory has quickly dropped. So less than half of the supply that we had at the beginning of the month. $854,000 was a median sales price here over the last week for pending sales, selling at 98% of the asking price. This has been the norm here over the past few weeks. We were seeing 99% for a little bit of the asking price, but really 98% of the asking price is pretty normal in King County. A little bit of competition still. 25% of all offer situations, multiple offer situations. 28% was the case last week. Now, slightly down in escalation clauses. We're always looking at those to see, okay, are people competing on price? 6% of those multiple offer situations had the escalation addendum. 7% had them last week. Not much change there. So we're still seeing some competition, right? Most likely on newer listings or listings that had a big price drop and are now positioned to sell. If we look at the financing addendums and the inspection addendums, the other two contingencies we like to pay attention to, 79% of all the offers in King County had a financing addendum. 51% had a inspection. And this past week, 76% had financing addendums, slightly less than the previous week, and 49%, also slightly less, had the inspection addendums. I don't think there's too much to read into here. The market is still what it is. It's competitive in certain situations, certain neighborhoods, certain houses, but overall, it's still really favorable to buyers, a place where you can have contingencies. You can compete maybe, right, on those newer houses, but you also can most likely get a price reduction, as we were talking about earlier in the video. I think there's lots of opportunities in the market right now, but that's going to disappear very quickly. As we've been saying, inventory shrinking fast. It's not just shrinking a little bit month over month, which it has been. There's a huge drop-off right now between the October inventory and the November inventory in King County. And if we look at Snohomish County is experiencing the same thing, at least as far as inventory goes. Now, some of these are probably canceled listings. There haven't been that many sales, at least not as we've looked, but 783 active listings in Snohomish County. There were 1,530 active listings at the end of October. So about half the listing inventory that we had at the beginning of the month in Snohomish County. Both King and Snohomish County, huge drop-offs in inventory. Median sales price in Snohomish County, $738,000 over the past week. The previous week, $769,950. Not a big drop here. Again, every time we look at median sales price, we're always looking at the entire month, not the week-over-week numbers. I do think it's interesting, though, percentage of list price, 98% again in Snohomish County. That's the same as it was last week. So King County, Snohomish County, you're both expecting about 98% of your asking price. If you're a seller, buyers, right, there's a little negotiation room, but not a huge amount. This isn't going to be one of those fire sale moments. It's not a market where sellers are just giving away their house. Speaking of giving away, Black Friday, right? There are some Black Friday deals out there, right? There are going to be certainly opportunities, but for the most part, not everybody's trying to discount their house 20%, 30% off, right? All right, pending sales, 22% of all offers had multiple offers, 21% last week, so a little uptick there in Snohomish County. But interestingly, only 2% of all those situations had escalation addendums. So not a lot of competition on price in Snohomish County, but that doesn't mean there weren't multiple offer scenarios. And I even had a situation a couple weeks ago, and I think I shared this, where there were 3 offers, but none of them competed on price, right? It was all on the terms. Financing addendums, 85% last week, 77% this week. Pretty big drop there. But inspections jumped the other way. 59% of all the offers in Snohomish County had inspections, 51% the week prior. And really, what we're just seeing overall is buyers are picking and choosing, right, what they want to do. They're clearly not competing on price, and they may or may not want or need these contingencies in the contract. Maybe the seller had given them a pre-inspection. I think the overall summary here, if I want you to take away anything, is that the inventory is dropping fast. And when that happens, the market starts to shift in the favor of sellers. And this year has kind of been up and down. There have been parts of the year where they've favored buyers more. There have been certainly parts of the year where sellers had the advantage in negotiations. I've seen some videos and commentary, the market's shifting, and they're talking about the market getting worse. And I think they're a little bit behind. I think the market shifted multiple times this year. I think it's shifting again. I think the market is heading towards being a seller's market again. And so I think if you're a buyer, listen up. I think your opportunity window is getting smaller. I think if I was a buyer, I'd be prioritizing getting started with my home search right now. I wouldn't be waiting. I know that the spring's going to be more competitive. It always is, especially when there's no inventory out there. And so if I'm a buyer, I'm starting to get ready for my home search. And if I'm somebody who owns a house and I'm thinking about maybe making a move, if you're going to make a move where you essentially upgrade your house, this is going to be the perfect time to do that, because you have an opportunity to potentially buy something at a little bit of a discount. Again, not a Black Friday sale, but if you can do that right now and then sell your house in 2, 3, 4 months when the market's even hotter in the spring, you're going to win on both sides. You're getting a better price now, and you're also getting a better price on the sale of your house. So I think if you're trying to time the market and you're somebody who's upgrading your house, this is the perfect time of the year to do it. It's inconvenient for sure. It is super inconvenient, but you don't have to sell your house right now. You don't have to worry about that piece unless, of course, that's a burden for you financially, which I guess for most people that probably is. But I think if you can swing it and you're making an upgrade and you can somehow time it to buy right now and sell later, I think you're going to be really happy with yourself. Thanks so much for watching this week's Seattle Housing Market Watch. And if you made it all the way to the end, and if you're watching this, you did, I would super appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up. It means a lot to me. And if there's any way that I can bring value to your situation, if you're thinking about selling a home, buying a home here in the Seattle area, I'd love to be a resource for you.